The sound of small footsteps echoed down the quiet suburban street, followed by a cry that sliced through the humid Charleston air. "Please, someone help! They're hurting my mom." Grayson Holt froze. He was sitting inside his black Cadillac Escalade, engine running. Bluetooth call still open with one of his business partners, a call about closing another multi-million-dollar deal. But that voice, that trembling, terrified little voice, it didn't belong in his world of numbers and marble floors. It belonged to somewhere real. Through the tinted window he saw a girl, no older than 8, sprinting barefoot across the street, her hair a tangled mess of fear and tears. She slammed her tiny hands against his car window, breathless. "Please, sir, they're hurting my mom." The words hit him harder than he expected. Grayson's instinct was to look away, to convince himself it wasn't his problem. That's what people like him did. They stayed out of trouble. But something in that child's eyes cracked the shell he'd built around his heart for years. He opened the door. "Where's your mother?" he asked, his deep voice trembling slightly. The girl, Sophie, pointed down the street where 2 men stood in front of a small beige house. From the porch, a woman was crying, a familiar face. Grayson blinked. Elena, his housekeeper. The woman who had quietly cleaned his mansion every Tuesday morning for 3 years. The one who always smiled politely but never spoke much. Before he knew it, Grayson was running. The men didn't notice him at first. One of them, a heavy-set guy with tattoos on his neck, shoved Elena against the wooden railing. "You think you can just ignore us?" he growled. "Your husband owed money, lady. Someone's got to pay." Grayson's voice cut through the chaos. "Let her go." The 2 men turned, startled. His sharp suit, expensive shoes, and the cold authority in his tone made them pause for a second. "And who the hell are you?" One spat. Grayson stepped closer, his eyes burning with a fury he hadn't felt in years. "Someone who can make your life very difficult." There was silence and then a nervous laugh. "You what, you gonna buy us off?" Sophie clung to his leg, whispering, "Please don't let them hurt her again." That whisper broke something inside him. It wasn't just pity, it was recognition. Grayson remembered another voice years ago, begging him not to walk away when his wife was dying, a voice he ignored. He'd been haunted ever since. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Someone must have called the police. The men hesitated, muttered curses, and backed off. But before leaving, one of them threw a warning glance at Elena. "This isn't over." Grayson's chest tightened as he helped her up. "You should have told me," he said quietly. Elena's eyes filled with shame. "I didn't want to lose my job. I didn't want pity." Their gaze met, 2 different worlds colliding under the weight of something neither could name. Sophie was still crying, her small hand gripping Grayson's sleeve. At that moment, something changed in him. For the first time in years, Grayson Holt felt human. He took a deep breath, looking down the street where the men had vanished. "You're coming with me," he said firmly. "You're not staying here another night." Elena shook her head. "Mr. Holt, I can't," but his tone softened. "Elena, you can, and you will." As they walked toward his car, the storm clouds began to gather. A soft thunder rolled in the distance. It felt like the beginning of something that neither of them could yet understand. Grayson didn't know that helping her would soon uncover a secret, buried deep in his own past, one that would change everything he believed about loyalty, forgiveness, and fate. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me. And leave in the comments which city or country you're listening from. The rain started just as Grayson's Cadillac rolled up the long driveway to his estate, a mansion framed by iron gates and guarded by silence. Eleanor sat in the back seat with Sophie clutched against her chest, trembling. Her uniform was torn, her face pale. The little girl's hands were still shaking as she stared out the window, watching the world blur in streaks of water and headlights. Inside the car, the air was thick with unspoken questions. Grayson's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He had driven in silence since they left that broken neighborhood. His mind was racing, but not with business strategies. For once, he wasn't thinking of profits or deals. He was thinking of the look in that child's eyes. When they reached the house, Margaret, the older house manager, opened the door with surprise. "Mr. Holt, it's almost midnight. Oh, my lord, what happened?" "Get them something warm to eat," Grayson said quietly. And a first aid kit. Margaret didn't ask more. She simply guided Elena and Sophie to the kitchen, wrapping them in towels. The smell of hot cocoa soon filled the room, and for a moment Sophie stopped trembling. Grayson leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying Elena in the warm light. "Who were those men?" he asked finally. His tone wasn't angry, just heavy. Elena hesitated, eyes down. "They were people my husband dealt with before he died. I didn't know about his debts until they came for me." Grayson frowned. "How much do you owe?" "It doesn't matter," she said softly. "They won't stop. People like that never do." Her words echoed in him. People like that never stop. He'd heard that once, from his late wife before cancer took her. She used to say that greed had a way of chasing people, devouring them piece by piece. Margaret placed her hand gently on his arm. "She needs help, Grayson. And that little girl. She reminds me of someone." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, my daughter." The name caught in his throat, Lily. The little girl he lost in a car accident 10 years ago. The reason he'd buried himself in work, closing his heart to everyone who tried to reach him. Grayson turned to Eleanor again, voice low. "You should have told me." "I would have helped." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to be a burden. I've seen how you look at people like me. The ones who have nothing." Her words stung because they were true. For years he'd built walls around his heart and called it discipline. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're staying here until we sort this out." "No argument." Sophie looked up timidly. "Mister, are the bad men going to come here?" Grayson knelt in front of her. "Not while you're with me." She gave a small nod, the first flicker of trust crossing her face. That night, after they went to sleep in the guest room, Grayson poured himself a glass of scotch and sat by the fire. The storm raged outside, lightning slicing through the dark windows. He opened his laptop and searched for the names Dale Carter and Rick Monroe. Nothing came up, sir, but he wasn't surprised. Men like that didn't exist on paper. He scrolled deeper into old police reports, his sharp mind piecing things together. Something about Elena's husband, Robert Moore, caught his attention. A small-town mechanic who had mysteriously vanished before his accidental death. It didn't add up. Margaret entered quietly, placing a blanket over his shoulders. "You care, don't you?" she whispered. Grayson didn't answer. But the truth was he hadn't cared this deeply about anything in years. Before heading upstairs, he looked once more toward the guest wing, where a mother and her child slept under his roof, unaware that their tragedy had awakened ghosts he'd long buried. In that moment, a thought flickered through his mind. What if fate had brought them to him for a reason? He didn't know it yet, but the truth behind Elena's past and her husband's death would drag him into a world far darker than he imagined. And this time, walking away wouldn't be an option. The morning sun broke through the rain clouds, painting the Holt mansion in soft gold. But for Grayson, there was no peace in that light. He'd barely slept. His mind kept replaying the images from last night, Sophie's tears, Elena's bruised face, and those two men's mocking laughter. He poured black coffee into a porcelain cup and opened his laptop again. The fire from the night before had turned to ashes. But the questions burning in his mind hadn't cooled. Grayson typed Robert Moore into a private legal database he often used for background checks on business partners. The search results loaded slowly and then froze him cold. Robert Moore, deceased. Occupation, mechanic, freelance contractor. Previous employer, Holt Developments, Maintenance Division. His hand went rigid. His company? He scrolled down. The report said Robert had been employed on a construction project 6 years ago, one that ended abruptly after an accident killed 2 workers. The case had been settled quietly, with no follow-up investigation. Grayson frowned. He remembered that project. It was in Savannah. Back then his assistant handled all legal claims, a man named Patrick Vaughan. A trusted right hand, ruthless, efficient, and cold as steel. He picked up his phone and called Patrick. "Patrick, it's me," he said sharply. "I need details on a former employee, Robert Moore. Worked for us about 6 years ago." There was a long pause. "Why are you asking about him now?" Patrick replied, his tone measured. "Just send me everything you have on the Savannah case today." "I'll look for it," Patrick said. "But Grayson, that file was sealed." "You signed off on it." Grayson's stomach tightened. Then unseal it. He hung up and leaned back, eyes fixed on the window. Sophie was in the garden below, chasing butterflies with a laugh so pure it hurt to hear. For a moment, he saw Lily again, his daughter running across the same lawn years ago, her laughter echoing through the halls he now wandered in silence. The knock on the door pulled him back. Helena stepped in carefully, holding a tray of breakfast she had insisted on preparing despite Margaret's protests. "You shouldn't be up," he said. "I can't just sit," she replied softly. "I owe you too much already." He studied her face and the small cut near her temple, the eyes that tried to hide exhaustion. "Helena, did your husband ever mention working for Holt Developments?" Her brows furrowed. "Yes, years ago. He said it was good money until something happened. He never wanted to talk about it." "Why?" Grayson hesitated. "Because that company was mine." Eleanor froze. "What?" He nodded slowly. "Robert worked for one of my projects. The one that went wrong." Her lips parted in shock. "You mean you were his boss?" The weight of guilt pressed on him like stone. He looked away. "I didn't know." "I swear to you, Elena, I didn't know it was him." Tears welled in her eyes. "That accident ruined us, Mr. Holt. Robert changed after that. He started drinking, borrowing money. He said someone from the company offered him silence money, but it wasn't enough to start over. Then he died." The word struck him like a knife. Silence money. Patrick. Grayson's hands curled into fists. If what she said was true, then someone inside his own company had buried the truth and left an innocent family to suffer. Before he could respond, Margaret rushed into the room, holding a letter. "This came for you, Grayson." "No sender." He opened it, and inside a single photo fell out. A photo of Elena's house from the night before, taken in the rain. And a note scrawled beneath it, "Stay out of things that aren't yours." Grayson stared at the message, his pulse pounding. Someone was watching them. "Elena," he said quietly, "you and Sophie don't leave this house." Not for anything, she looked terrified. "What's happening?" Grayson's gaze hardened, the businessman in him giving way to something fiercer. "A protector. Someone wants to keep a secret buried," he said, voice low. "But they picked the wrong man to threaten." As thunder rumbled again in the distance, he realized this wasn't just about helping Elena anymore. It was about redemption and revenge. By noon, the storm had rolled out to sea, leaving Charleston scraped clean and glaring with sun. Grayson didn't feel the brightness. He drove downtown with knuckles tight on the wheel, every red light a taunt. Patrick Vaughan's office, sleek glass, brushed steel, expensive silence, sat on the 12th floor. Exactly the kind of place where messy truths were polished into corporate statements. Patrick rose from behind his desk with that same cool smile he wore in boardrooms. "You look like you haven't slept, Gray. Coffee?" "I want the Savannah file," Grayson said. "Unsealed now." Patrick's eyes didn't blink. "We've discussed this. Legal closed the matter. You signed it. I know what I signed. I want to see what you made me sign." A muscle in Patrick's jaw ticked. He motioned to his assistant, who slipped out, and then leaned on the desk, voice dropping. "You don't want to dig up ghosts. It isn't good for you, not after Lily." The name landed like a slap. Grayson stepped forward. "Don't use my daughter to stop me from doing the right thing." Patrick studied him, reassessing, then tapped a code into a wall panel. A hidden cabinet slid open, revealing a fireproof box. He set a slim folder on the desk and flipped it open with 2 fingers. Savannah. 6 years ago, 2 fatalities. An OSHA citation. A settlement. Nothing illegal. Grayson didn't sit. He scanned fast. Incident reports, photos, typed statements. Then he saw a name that sucked the air from his lungs. Subcontractor. Vanguard Atlantic Security. Site supervisor. Dale Carter. He looked up slowly. Carter. Patrick's brows lifted, feigning innocence. Common name. Not when he's the same man who assaulted my housekeeper last night. Patrick's smile faded. Gray, you're connecting dots because you're emotional. The world isn't a conspiracy. Grayson turned a page. A photocopy of a check stub, routed through a shell consultancy, with a name that sounded like a shipping company. Seaboard Holdings. He flipped another page. An incident addendum with a signature that ought to have steadied the site after the first safety violation. Inspector L. Whitaker. Only the L looked unnatural. as if added by a different pen. "This signature is forged," Grayson said, the old instinct for detail hardening his voice. Patrick spread his hands. "You're not a handwriting expert, but I know your shortcuts." Grayson snapped a photo with his phone. "Where's the whistleblower complaint?" Patrick's eyelids flickered. He recovered. "There wasn't one." "There was," Grayson said softly. "Robert Moore filed it. Or tried to." Silence throbbed between them. "Even if he did," Patrick said finally, each word trimmed of feeling, "the investigation would have found nothing. Moore was unstable, drinking, in debt." "Because we broke him," Grayson said. Patrick's gaze turned cold. "We? No. If a man takes a loan from the wrong people, it isn't our job to parent him. Our job is to deliver projects. That accident killed 2 men and saved 100 jobs down the line," Patrick countered. "You pay attention to outcomes. That's why you're you." Grayson felt something old and ugly crawl up his spine, the voice that once justified everything so he wouldn't feel anything. He shoved it down. "Who hired Vanguard?" "I did," Patrick said, proud of his own efficiency. "They were cost-effective." "And why is Dale Carter on a subcontractor roster?" Grayson asked, "and also collecting on personal debts tied to one of our workers?" Patrick's lips curved, a ghost of a smile. "Side hustles. Not my concern." Grayson reached into the folder again. Tucked between audit sheets, a slim envelope. Inside, a single printout of an email header, from Armory to Pivon in subject, "I won't be quiet." Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. 3 days before Robert's accidental death. No body text, just metadata. The message itself gone, deleted, purged. He raised the page. "You received this," Patrick shrugged. "People send threats when they're cornered. Where's the email?" "Auto-purged. Legal retention schedules." Grayson's phone buzzed. A message from the private investigator he'd quietly called at dawn. Pulled city camera near Eleanor's street. Carter seen with Monroe 10:42 p.m. Same men on Vanguard timesheets last quarter. Also, Seaboard Holdings is managed by Patrick Vaughn. Grayson looked up. "You own the shell." Patrick didn't flinch. "Indirectly. It wasn't a conspiracy board anymore. It was a map, printed in clean lines, Vanguard. Carter, Seaboard, Patrick. The accident that wasn't just bad luck. The debt that became a leash. Robert didn't just die," Grayson said. "He was pushed until he broke." Patrick exhaled slowly, as if explaining weather. "Gray, don't do this. You cannot fix the past. And if you tear this open, you will burn your name. Your legacy. Charity galas will not save you. Your investors will run. And for what? For a housekeeper with bad luck, and a kid who cried at your window. Something in Grayson, dormant and gray for 10 years, stood up inside him. For a man we ground into dust," he said. "And for a woman who's still bleeding from it." Patrick's eyes hardened to flint. "Walk away." No, the door clicked. The assistant returned, pale. "Mr. Vaughn, there's a man in reception asking for Mr. Holt. Says his name is Monroe." Patrick's gaze flicked to Grayson. He could have masked his surprise, but didn't. "You brought them here." "I didn't," Grayson said. Patrick straightened his tie. "Good, because if Carter and Monroe are here, they're not here for you." He paused, letting the next words sink like teeth. "They're here because Elena's debt was just sold to a new owner who prefers decisive action." Grayson's heartbeat thudded in his ears. "You?" "Seaboard acquired the paper this morning," Patrick said. "Entirely legal. If she pays, everyone goes home. She can't. Then she'll learn a valuable lesson about choosing men," he said, careless, cruel. Grayson stepped forward until they were inches apart. "If you touch her family, I will dismantle every company you're hiding behind, and I will do it in the daylight." A quiet, mirthless chuckle. "You won't get the chance." From reception came raised voices, the metallic crack of a dropped object, a woman's gasp. Grayson spun toward the sound, but Patrick's hand closed on his sleeve. "Don't, Gray," Patrick murmured. "You don't know what you're walking into." "I lived there for 10 years, Grayson said, shaking him off. "In the dark." He strode into the corridor. Monroe, thick-set, nervous eyes, stood at the elevator with a small padded envelope. He clocked Grayson, swallowed, and held it out. "For you," he muttered. "From Carter." Grayson didn't take it. "Open it." Monroe hesitated, then tore the flap. A single object slid into his palm and clinked. A tiny silver charm bracelet. A child's, a daisy charm, enamel chipped at the petals. Grayson's throat closed. He'd seen that bracelet yesterday, spinning on Sophie's wrist as she twirled in the garden, the daisy flashing in the sun. Monroe's voice was low. "Message says, next time it won't be the bracelet." The hallway tilted. For a second, everything stopped. The polished floors, the glass, Patrick's immaculate world. Then Grayson moved, the decision already made before his mind could argue. He took the bracelet, slid it into his pocket like a vow, and looked back at Patrick. "This isn't business anymore." Patrick's mouth formed a polite line. "Nothing ever is." Grayson jabbed the elevator button. As the doors parted, he dialed Margaret with his other hand. She picked up on the first ring, breathless. "Grayson, Sophie's fine. She's with me." But a black SUV circled twice. "Helena's shaking." "Lock the house," he said. "Armed response now. Already done." He ended the call and faced the mirrored elevator wall. His own reflection stared back. Same suit, same eyes. But something had changed. The man who did not get involved was gone. The elevator dropped. His phone buzzed again. A second message from the investigator. Found something else. "Robert Moore left a voicemail on your old company line the night he died. Timestamp 2:19 a.m. copy attached." You never heard it because Patrick rerouted the inbox. The audio file waited behind a play button. Grayson pressed it. Static. Then a raw, ragged voice. "Mr. Holt." "It's Robert. They want me to sign off on a lie. If anything happens to me, tell my girls I tried to do the right." The recording cut out. The doors opened to street glare and hot, moving air. Grayson pocketed the phone. He had what he needed. A trail, a name, a promise, and a child's broken daisy burning against his palm. He stepped into the light, already dialing the one person who could pull every contract, freeze every account, and put Patrick in a corner he couldn't buy his way out of. The line rang. A woman answered. "Holt Development's legal." "Put me through to compliance," he said. "We're reopening Savannah, and we're doing it in my name." Outside, a black SUV rolled slowly past and did not stop, and somewhere between the mansion gates and the city's glass towers, the past that Grayson had buried turned around and started walking toward him. By dusk, Grayson's mansion was under full lockdown. Security drones patrolled the iron gates, and Margaret had armed the alarms twice after spotting the black SUV again. Inside, Elena sat at the kitchen table with Sophie asleep in her lap, her eyes hollow but steady. Grayson stood by the window, the child's bracelet gleaming on the table beside his phone. He'd listened to Robert's last voicemail 5 times. Each replay hollowed him out a little more. "Tell my girls I tried to do the right." The line always cut off there, a sentence hanging in eternity. The front door opened, and Margaret's voice echoed down the hall. "Grayson, there's a visitor." "Says she's from the police." He turned sharply. "At this hour?" A woman in plain clothes stepped in, 40-ish, serious, polite. "The detective Laura Bennett, Charleston PD." She flashed her badge. "I was told you filed a private report about the assault on your employee. Thought I'd follow up in person." Her calm tone steadied Eleanor, who finally spoke. "Did you find those men?" "Not yet," the detective said, glancing at Grayson. "But we ran the names. Dale Carter has a record for extortion and assault. Rick Monroe, minor offenses. Both connected to a shell company, Seaboard Holdings." Grayson's pulse quickened. "You know who owns it?" Bennett nodded slowly. "That's the thing. The ownership trail runs through 5 states. But one of the signatories on the original incorporation papers," she flipped a small notebook open. "Patrick Vaughn," Eleanor gasped. "That's his business partner." Grayson's jaw clenched. "Not anymore." The detective's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Holt, if your company's former executives were involved in coercion or injury, this becomes criminal. You might want to keep your distance." "Distance is what caused this mess," Grayson said. "I'm not walking away again." Before Bennett could respond, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then went out entirely. Sophie stirred in her mother's arms, murmuring. "Backup generator," Margaret whispered, hurrying toward the hall. Then came the crunch of gravel outside. Headlights swept across the windows. 1, 2, 3 beams cutting through the rain-drenched darkness. Bennett's hand went to her sidearm. "Stay inside." Grayson moved to the monitor. 3 vehicles. The same SUV and 2 more. Men in dark clothes stepping out. Flashlights slicing through the mist. "Carter," he said under his breath. Margaret grabbed Sophie. "Basement, now." Elena's breath hitched. "Oh, God." Bennett clicked her radio. This is Detective Bennett requesting immediate backup. Possible armed trespass at... The signal cut off. Static. Phones are jammed, Grayson said grimly. They're blocking the line. He crossed to the cabinet, pulled out a metal case and snapped it open. Inside, a registered Glock. Bennett's brows rose. You plan to shoot your way out? She asked. Only if they give me no choice. Outside, footsteps approached the door. Then bang. A crash as the lock splintered. Get back! Bennett shouted, drawing her weapon. The door burst open, rain sweeping in. Carter stepped through, soaked, grinning with a cut lip and dead eyes. Evening, Mr. Holt. Cute house. Shame if something happened to it. Grayson stepped forward, calm but cold. You don't belong here, Carter smirked. Neither did your worker on that Savannah site, remember? Robert Moore. We both know he signed off a lie, Eleanor gasped. You killed him. Carter shrugged. He killed himself, lady. We just gave him a reason, that was it. Grayson lunged, slamming Carter against the wall. The gun clattered. Rain poured in behind them. Where's your boss now? Grayson growled. Carter spat blood. Right where he's always been, pulling your strings. Bennett kicked the gun toward her and aimed steady. Hands where I can see them. But Carter only grinned wider. You don't get it. This isn't about debts. It's about insurance. Patrick wanted proof you'd cross him. He's got it now. Grayson froze. What are you talking about? Carter tilted his head toward the security camera in the hall. Smile for the recording, boss. Whole city's about to see the great Grayson Holt assaulting an unarmed man. The hero who got his maid's husband killed. That's what this is really about. For a moment, everything went still. Elena's scream caught in her throat. Sophie's bracelet glinting under the flickering lights. Then a siren wailed faintly in the distance. Backup, maybe. Too far. Carter shoved Grayson backward and bolted through the door. Bennett fired once, grazing his shoulder, but he vanished into the rain. Grayson stood there, chest heaving, the truth crashing down. Patrick had orchestrated everything. Not just the cover-up, but the setup. He wanted Grayson to lose everything publicly. Margaret appeared, clutching Sophie. What now? Grayson looked at them. The woman who'd lost everything. The child clutching faith like a candle, and his voice came out steady. Now, he said. We turned the camera on him. He picked up the bracelet again, the daisy charm cold in his palm. What once symbolized innocence now burned like evidence. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, something darker stirred, justice. Long overdue. He didn't know yet how deep Patrick's betrayal ran, or that the voicemail Robert left contained one more secret no one had heard. But when he looked at Sophie and Eleanor, he knew this. Whatever it took. This story wasn't ending in tragedy, not this time. The mansion held its breath after the invasion, doors reinforced, alarms rearmed, the halls humming with generator power. But inside the study, only the fireplace dared make a sound. Grayson set the silver daisy on the desk like a compass and opened his laptop. There was still something in Robert's last voicemail, something that refused to let him go. He forwarded the audio to a forensic sound engineer he kept on retainer for corporate disputes. 10 minutes later, a reply arrived. Background noise isolated. Hear the beeps? That's a keypad. Pattern 2197. There's also a squeak consistent with a metal door hinge. The location sounds industrial, not residential. Margaret hovered at the threshold. You've eaten nothing. I'll eat when this makes sense. Elena's praying in the guest room, she said softly. For you too. Grayson didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth shifted. He hit redial on the engineer. Run the voicemail metadata. Cell tower pings, street cams near any Holt properties with an industrial door, anything. While he waited, he replayed the final seconds, listening past the words this time. Beep, 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 2197, a strained breath, and that hinge. His mind snapped to a place he hadn't thought about in years, an auxiliary storage unit he'd leased during the Savannah project to hold old site logs and safety gear. The unit number, 2197, Savannah outskirts, legally under Holt Developments, until Patrick optimized the company's asset list and offloaded it to a shell. The phone rang. The engineer's voice was crisp. Tower triangulation puts Robert near Harbor Industrial Park, Savannah, at 2:18 a.m. 6 years ago. There's a municipal camera 2 blocks away. Want me to pull it? Yes. And Mr. Holt. The recording cuts mid-sentence. because the line was remotely terminated, not by bad reception, by someone with admin access. Grayson stared at the screen. Patrick again. He grabbed his keys. Margaret, hold the fort. Detective Bennett stays with you. He'll be back before dawn. Elena stepped into the hall, hands knotted together. You can't go alone. I've been alone for 10 years, he said gently, but I won't be when this is over. Sophie peeked from behind her mother. Will you bring my bracelet back? He touched the daisy in his pocket. I already did. Now I'm bringing something else back, your mum's piece. 3 hours later, the Escalade rolled into Savannah beneath a moon-like polished bone. Harbor Industrial Park slept in long shadows and sodium lights. Unit 2197 looked forgotten. Corrugated metal, rusted lock, weeds clawing the concrete. Grayson tried the keypad out of instinct. 2197. The red light blinked green. The old code still lived in the bones of the place. The metal door moaned, the same hinge he'd heard in Robert's last breath. He clicked on his flashlight. Dust spun in the beam like tired stars. Shelves sagged with obsolete hard hats, binders, and plastic tubs of documents that should have been archived or destroyed. Patrick's efficiency had missed a pocket of truth. He pulled a tub down. Inside daily site logs, Savannah. Another held incident photos, internal. A third, vendor contracts, Vanguard Atlantic. And beneath them, a sealed manila envelope marked in ballpoint, if anything happens to me. His throat tightened. He slit the seal with his car key. Inside were 2 items, a handwritten letter and a cheap USB stick taped to the page. Mr. Holt, the letter began, the pen strokes uneven but determined. You don't know me, but you should. I tried to stop them. They told me to sign that the safety alarms worked when they didn't. Mr. Vaughan said it was temporary until compliance cleared it. I wouldn't. Then the men he hired started showing up. They said accidents happen to those who make waves. If anything happens to me, it won't be because I didn't try. My wife is Elena. My girl is Sophie, the one with the daisy bracelet she won at the fair. Please tell them I tried to do the right thing. Robert Moore. Grayson closed his eyes. The daisy burned against his palm. He plugged the USB into a portable reader. A single folder opened. Camera B0617. The timestamp matched the week of the deaths. He clicked the first file. Grainy footage filled the screen. Night vision green of the Savannah site. 2 men moved through scaffolding, one carrying a toolbox, the other, Dale Carter, lugging a small battery pack. They stopped at a junction box labeled Alarm Linkage. Carter popped the panel, yanked a wire and jammed a jumper across terminals. The overlay clock ticked, 1:59 a.m. They looked up once as if listening. Then Carter lifted his phone and spoke. The reader's audio was thin, but one word bled through the static. Patrick. Grayson's jaw set. The second video showed Robert entering alone at 2:12 a.m., looking around, nervous. He held a clipboard. He reached for the panel Carter had tampered with, tracing the wire like a man reading a confession. He pulled his phone, dialed, and spoke quickly. The timestamp 2:17 a.m. The same moment the voicemail began, there was a third clip. It started with a back corridor and a distant door. Heavy footsteps. Robert turned. A figure entered frame. Broad-shouldered, face-shadowed, cap low. The man raised a hand as if in warning, then stepped closer. Robert backed up. The footage jittered. The camera shook on its mount as a vibration rattled the structure. Then the picture blew out in a white flare, choked with dust. When it cleared, the corridor was empty. The timer read 2:19 a.m., the minute the message cut off. Grayson scrubbed backward, frame by frame. The stranger's cap tipped as he moved. For a split second, the brim lifted and a jawline flashed. Clean, patrician, cruelly familiar. Not Patrick. Someone upstream. Someone he'd never questioned, because donors wore cufflinks and pressed his shoulder at Galus. His phone buzzed. The engineer again. Pulled that municipal cam. Guess whose SUV passed the park at 2:05 a.m. the night of the accident? Patrick. And another plate registered to Whitaker Consulting. Your inspector of record. L. Whitaker, Grayson said. The forged signature. Not forged, the engineer replied. Altered. The initial is an E turned into an L. Everett Whitaker. Retired now. Very cozy with city permits. Sends donation checks to the Holt Foundation every December. The foundation, his wife's memorial. Grayson's stomach turned. The rot had threaded through his charity, laundering reputations he thought he was redeeming. A pebble scuffed outside. Grayson killed the light and slid behind a shelf. The unit door shuddered, then squealed open. A beam of light cut across the floor and climbed the metal wall. Carter's voice drifted in. "Told you he'd come." Another voice followed, low and immaculate. "Patrick." "Of course he came. He's addicted to answers." A third voice clicked like a metronome, measured, old, unhurried. "Get the drive, no mess. He still has uses." Grayson gripped the USB, mind racing. Uses for what? To absorb the scandal? To sign away the truth one last time? He slid the drive into his sock and palmed a rusted wrench from the shelf. Carter's flashlight found the open tub. "He's here." Patrick's silhouette edged in. "Gray, you don't want to escalate." Grayson stepped from the shadow, wrench at his side, calm as cold steel. "I already have." Patrick lifted his hands, patron saint of tidy endings. "Give me the drive. We'll restructure, pay out Elena, relocate her if you're sentimental. You'll make a speech about lessons learned. The market forgives everything." Grayson's eyes slid to the third man, Everett Whitaker, grant money varnished into respectability, his gaze as blank as a ledger. "You killed 2 men to keep a schedule." Whitaker didn't blink. "We prevented a collapse that would have sunk 1,000 pensions." "By burying 2 fathers," Grayson said, "and turning one into your debt puppet." Carter rolled his shoulder, bored. "Can we skip to the part where I take what you found?" "No," Grayson said. "We're skipping to the part where you talk. On camera." He thumbed a button in his pocket. Back in Charleston, Margaret's tablet received the trigger and pushed a link live. Holt Developments, Compliance Archive, Public. The mansion servers, long fed by Grayson's obsession with backups, began uploading the scanned logs, the vendor contracts, and the Savannah clips, each tagged with timestamps, each cross-linked to Seaboard and Vanguard. Detective Bennett, startled, watched the files appear in real time. Patrick saw the glow from Grayson's phone. His smile finally cracked. "What did you do?" "I turned the camera," Grayson said. "You taught me that trick," Carter lunged. Grayson swung the wrench. It cracked against the flashlight. The beam died. Bodies collided in the dark and went down hard. A fist clipped Grayson's cheek. Stars burst. He rolled, found the doorframe by instinct, and shoved the metal up. Night air crashed in, and with it the distant wash of sirens. Patrick cursed. "Everett, get the drive!" Whitaker didn't move. He was looking at the parking lot, at 2 squad cars braking sideways, blue lights bleeding across corrugated steel. Detective Bennett stepped out, service weapon trained. "Hands where I can see them!" Carter bolted toward the rear gate and vanished into shadow. Patrick lifted his hands and composed his face, innocent, injured, indignant. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. We were securing our property." Bennett didn't lower her gun. "Your property just confessed to itself on a public link." Grayson staggered into the light, blood at his lip, the wrench hanging at his side. He looked at Whitaker. "Tell me why Robert's message cut." Whitaker finally spoke, voice almost tender. "Because a truth arriving at the wrong hour is indistinguishable from a lie." Bennett cuffed him. "You can workshop that in holding." As she read rights under the wail of sirens, Grayson's phone vibrated again. "A new email. Subject, your wife's memorial fund. From unknown. Inside, a single line and a video thumbnail. She told you the alarms were faulty before she died. You ignored her. Listen now." He tapped the thumbnail. His late wife filled the screen in a shaky kitchen video from years ago, eyes bright, voice steady. "Gray, if you see this, it means I failed to get through in person. Please, slow down. Check the sites yourself. People matter more than timelines." The clip ended. The night folded around him. He felt the lesson land, sharp, simple, irrevocable. He closed his eyes, the daisy warm in his fist, and understood the real shape of the battle ahead. Not just to expose Patrick, but to become the man Lily and his wife had believed he still could be. From the squad car radio, Bennett's voice crackled. "Units in pursuit of a black SUV. Northbound, possible suspect Carter." The chase had begun, and somewhere between Savannah and Charleston, a frightened child was finally sleeping. Grayson looked at the USB-shaped welt in his sock, and then at the detective. "We finish in daylight," he said. "All of it. The horizon, still dark, hinted at a thin ribbon of gold. Dawn was coming, with witnesses. The sun was climbing when Grayson and Detective Bennett drove back toward Charleston, police convoys splitting off behind them with prisoners in tow. In the passenger seat, Bennett scrolled through a tablet streaming the evidence upload. "Every outlet's picking it up," she said. "The footage, the letter, the contracts. You just detonated a corporate bomb." Grayson kept his eyes on the highway. "Good, let it burn." She turned the screen toward him. "Whitaker and Vaughn are in custody, but Carter's still missing. He's your live wire, Holt. He knows every dirty transaction you just exposed. He's also desperate." He gripped the wheel tighter. "Then he'll go after what hurts most." At the mansion, Margaret met them at the door. "Eleanor's resting, but she's been on edge all morning. Sophie keeps asking when you'll come home." "I'm home now," he said. Margaret hesitated. "There's something else." The SUV came back at dawn, stopped across the street for maybe 5 minutes, then left. Bennett lifted her phone. "We'll increase patrol." Grayson nodded, but his gaze had already drifted to the staircase. Sophie was there, peeking between the rails. She ran down and wrapped her arms around him. "You came back." "Always," he whispered. Behind them, Elena appeared, her face drawn but resolute. "You found something, didn't you?" "I found the truth," he said. "And the men who destroyed your life are finally paying for it." She took a deep breath, tears trembling on her lashes. "Then maybe Robert can rest now." He almost smiled. But then a flash of metal outside the window. Too bright, too still. He moved fast, pushing Elena aside just as the glass exploded inward. A bullet hissed past his shoulder, burying itself in the wall. "Down!" Bennett barked, drawing her weapon. Sophie screamed as Margaret pulled her behind the counter. Grayson crawled to the shattered window. Across the drive, the black SUV idled behind the oak tree, windshield glinting like a predator's eye. "Carter," he said through his teeth. Bennett leaned beside him, sighting through the crack in the curtain. "He's not firing to kill. He's baiting. For what?" A vibration in his pocket, his phone. "Unknown number," he answered. Carter's voice was lazy, sing-song. "Nice morning for heroes, huh? You embarrassed some important people last night. They want the drive. You want your house safe. Trade's simple." "What do you mean, trade?" "You got something that belongs to me, Mr. Holt. That USB, and I got something that belongs to you." Grayson's stomach went cold. "You're bluffing." A click on the line, then a faint sob. Sophie's voice. "Mr. Grayson?" His heart stopped. He turned. The kitchen was empty. Margaret was sprawled on the floor, unconscious from the blast of the shattering window. Elena was gone too. "Where is she?" He roared into the phone. "Your maid and her kid are safe for now," Carter said. "Warehouse by the docks." "You've been there before." "Bring the drive." "Come alone." The line went dead. Bennett was already calling dispatch. "We'll trace it." No," Grayson snapped. He said alone. "If he sees police, he'll panic. Then at least let me follow." "I need him to trust me," he said. "And I need you to trust me." Bennett studied his face, then slowly nodded. "You get 5 minutes ahead of us, Holt. No more." He grabbed the daisy bracelet from the table, tucked it into his pocket beside the USB, and walked out into the glaring morning. The docks smelled of rust and salt and rot. He parked the Escalade near a row of empty containers and stepped out, hands raised, the USB visible between his fingers. "Carter!" The echo came back twice before the voice answered. "In here." He followed it into a warehouse gutted by time. Light spilled through broken skylights, slicing the air into gold and shadow. Carter stood near a column, gun loose at his side. Sophie sat on a crate, pale but alive. Elena beside her, wrists bound. "Good," Carter said. "Now slide it." Grayson tossed the USB halfway. "Release them first." "Not how this works." Grayson's tone stayed level. "You're a smart man. You know the files are already online. That drive's just a token." Carter smiled, teeth flashing. "Yeah, I saw the news, but people forget fast. You disappear and the story dies tidy." Grayson took a step closer. "You don't want me. You want Patrick's money. He's not paying you now. Then maybe you will." "I'll give you something better," Grayson said. "A chance to end this without blood. You talk. You tell the cops who ordered Robert Moore's death. You walk away alive." Carter laughed, a short, broken sound. "Alive? There's no alive left for me." He raised the gun, and then the distant wail of sirens broke the air. Carter flinched, looking toward the open door. Grayson moved. He grabbed the fallen chain from a pulley and swung it wide. It smashed into Carter's wrist, the gun skidding across the floor. "Run!" he shouted to Elena. Sophie bolted toward him as Bennett's team stormed through the doorway. Gunfire cracked, echoing through the metal cavern. When the smoke cleared, Carter was on the ground, breathing but beaten, eyes glassy with defeat. Bennett lowered her weapon. "You always did things the hard way, Holt." Grayson exhaled, his arms still wrapped around Sophie. "It's the only way that works." As medics moved in, Carter was lifted onto a stretcher. He turned his head toward Grayson, voice rasping. "You think you saved them? Vaughn's not the top. There's always someone higher." Grayson crouched beside him. "Then you'd better start talking before they silence you too." Carter gave a bitter smile. "Already did." His eyes flicked toward the gun on the ground, the safety light blinking red. A small transmitter gleamed beneath the trigger. Bennett's eyes widened. "Get back!" The blast ripped through the far end of the warehouse, swallowing Carter and the proof he carried. The shockwave knocked Grayson to the floor, shielding Sophie beneath him. When the dust settled, Bennett coughed, eyes burning. "He wired the gun." "Suicide trigger," Grayson nodded grimly. "Or someone did it for him." He stood, lifting Sophie into his arms. Outside, the sirens grew louder, the sky bleeding orange with dawn. Helena stumbled beside him, tears and soot on her face. "It's over," she whispered. He looked toward the smoke rising from the warehouse and shook his head. "Not yet. There's still someone out there, and whoever they are, they just made this personal." The daisy bracelet glittered faintly against his cuff as he carried Sophie toward the light. Unaware that far across the harbor, a man in a linen suit was watching through binoculars, smiling as the flames reflected in his glasses. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. By afternoon, news vans idled outside the mansion gates, lenses peering through iron like vultures waiting for movement. Inside the house was a hush of low voices and determined footsteps. Detective Bennett occupied the study, phone to ear, eyes on the evidence portal still pouring documents into daylight. Margaret brewed coffee like a ritual against despair. Eleanor sat close to Sophie, braiding and unbraiding the little girl's hair, whispering prayers that sounded like stitches pulling a wound together. Bennett's phone finally chimed with a new ping from a traffic cam near the harbor. She rotated the screen toward Grayson. "Your linen suit just got a name. Sterling Ashford." Grayson looked up sharply. "Ashford? From the Harbor Redevelopment Council. And the Ashford Philanthropic Trust," Bennett added. "He's donated to your wife's memorial fund every December." "Same checks that passed through Whitaker's hands." Grayson's mouth went dry. He'd shaken Sterling's hand a dozen times at gala tables, flooded with white flowers and promises. "He's not a contractor." "No," Bennett said. "He's a broker of favors, permits, inspections, schedules that magically hit quarterly earnings." She zoomed on the still, Ashford by the waterline, linen crisp as bone, binoculars raised. "He's the one who never gets his hands dirty." Grayson's phone buzzed. "Unknown number." He answered, already braced. "Grayson," the voice purred, warm as whiskey and twice as dangerous. "It's Sterling. First, what a pity about Patrick. Men like him forget discretion is a virtue. Second, what you did last night was messy." Grayson stepped into the hallway, pulse steadying into something like resolve. "You watched a man die this morning." "I watched a liability vanish," Ashford corrected gently. "You're a builder, Holt. You understand demolition precedes renewal. What do you want?" "Sit down," Ashford said. "Neutral ground. The Avery Hotel, 30 minutes, a beat. Bring your conscience." "Leave the detective." The line went dead. Bennett read his face. "You can't go alone," he held her gaze. "You gave me 5 minutes last time. Give me 10 now. If I'm not back, you come through the door." The Avery Hotel's rooftop bar glittered above the city, like a promise it had no intention of keeping. Sterling Ashford rose from a corner table, linen immaculate, a white pocket square folded like a blade. His smile was practiced, the kind that knew governors and funerals. "Gray," he said, as if offering an old nickname, as if they'd shared summers on a lake. "Sit." Grayson didn't. "Why Robert Moore?" Ashford sighed as if explaining gravity to a child. "Because he was in the wrong place, with the wrong integrity at the wrong time. Our world runs on timing. Yours included. He called me the night he died. And you didn't pick up, Ashford said softly, like a priest pressing the bruise. Your pen did. Your assistant did. Your foundation did. All of them did exactly what you built them to do. Protect the enterprise. Grayson's jaw tightened. This enterprise killed people. Ashford's eyes warmed with faux sympathy. And fed thousands. Pensions, schools. Do you burn an orchard for a few blighted apples? You bribed inspectors. You hired thugs. You silenced a widow with debt. I moved a city forward, Ashford said, voice flat now. The harbor becomes a skyline. People get jobs. Investors reign. Your name graces a wing where children heal. Scale requires sacrifice, Grayson leaned in, low. My wife warned me. She told me to slow down. Check the sights myself. He swallowed the ache. I didn't listen. That's on me. But what you did, what Patrick did, that's on you. Ashford slid a leather folio across the table. Inside lay 3 documents. A non-disclosure agreement, a statement blaming a rogue subcontractor deceased, and a generous restitution package for Elena and Sophie that read like a ransom dressed as charity. Sign, Ashford said, and the world calms. Your stock stabilizes. Your foundation doubles its funding. The widow is rehoused under a new name in a safe neighborhood with tuition for her girl. You get to be the hero without bleeding in public. And if I don't? Ashford's eyes flicked to the skyline, unbothered. Then the widow gets dragged through court. The child becomes a headline. Your foundation freezes under investigation. Sick kids lose beds. You'll look principled on a podcast once, and irrelevant forever after. A gust pushed at the glass. Somewhere below, a church bell insisted on the hour. Grayson stared at the papers. The old reflex, the one that measured cost against pain, rose to the surface like oil on water. He could fix this with a pen. He could hide Elena from the wolves, keep Sophie's world intact, and stop the bleeding in one stroke. Don't, a voice inside him said, not quite memory, not quite prayer. His wife's eyes in that shaky video. Lily's laughter filtered through an empty garden. Sophie's daisy pressing its daylight into his palm. He closed the folio and looked up. You want my signature to absolve your sin. I want your leadership, Ashford corrected. Leaders understand trade-offs. My signature created this, Grayson said quietly. My signature won't bury it, he stood. Ashford's smile thinned. Careful, Gray. Truth is an expensive addiction. It eats everything you love. Some things need eating. Ashford's phone vibrated. He glanced at it and chuckled. Your detective friend is prompt. She just subpoenaed my trust. Charming, useless without the board. He lifted his glass. Last offer. Grayson took a breath that felt like surfacing. Here's mine. I go on record. Full confession. My negligence, my company's rot, your machine. I resign and hand Holt to a federal monitor. Elena gets restitution from my personal assets, not your hush money. And your name, he nodded at the skyline, comes down from every plaque my foundation ever hung. For the first time, Ashford's eyes cooled to steel. You'll drown. Maybe, Grayson said. But I'll drown clean. They stared at each other across a table set for men who never sweated. Then Ashford's lips curved, almost fond. You finally sound like the man your wife tried to marry twice. Grayson turned to leave. Ashford's voice followed. Silk trimming iron. One more thing, Holt. That anonymous letter your wife received about faulty alarms, the one that started her sermon? It came from someone in your house. He paused. Patrick? Ashford shook his head. House, not office? The elevator's mirrored doors closed on Grayson's frown. Back at the mansion, Margaret met him in the foyer, worry crinkling her face. Elena waited in the parlor, eyes steady, hands folded like she'd been waiting to say something for years. I wrote it, she said before he could ask. The letter to your wife. I was working night cleanup at the old office. I saw an internal memo about temporarily bypassing alarms on Savannah. I didn't know how to reach you. So I mailed the letter to her because she looked kind. Grayson stared, the puzzle locking into place with a sound he felt in his bones. Eleanor, the quiet woman who had wiped his floors, who had whispered prayers in his hallways, had been the first voice calling him back from the edge. Long before a small girl pounded on his window, he exhaled, grief and gratitude braided tight. You warned us. We failed you anyway. Elena's eyes brightened with a watery smile. You're listening now. Detective Bennett stepped forward. We have enough for the state. But Ashford is federal. You sure you're ready for that storm? Grayson looked at Sophie twirling the bracelet, Daisy catching late sun. He thought of orchards and blight, of scales and sacrifices, of the clean terror of doing the right thing with both hands open. Ready, he said. And I won't sign a single thing that hides a single truth. Bennett nodded. Then we bring him into daylight. Outside, thunderheads gathered on the horizon again, a second storm building. This time Grayson didn't flinch. He walked to the study, opened a blank statement on his laptop, and began to type his own name where the blame belonged. Knowing that redemption costs, and some debts are only paid in public. Tomorrow at noon, the mansion's servers scheduled a live stream across every platform Holt had ever bought. Grayson Holt, full statement on Savannah, Seaboard and the Ashford Trust. He pressed save. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, and in a hotel across town, Sterling Ashford lifted his phone and dialed a number that woke something older and darker than any board. Move the timetable. If Holt won't sign, we'll collapse him before noon. Morning arrived heavy and electric. News channels ran Grayson's name in the same breath as corporate scandal, whistleblower and hero. His inbox was a war, half of it investors demanding reassurance, half of it strangers thanking him for honesty. The live stream countdown pulsed on every screen in the mansion. Oro 211654. Detective Bennett moved between calls. Federal task force confirmed arrests for Whitaker's associates. But Ashford's gone. Jet left Charleston at 6 a.m., destination unfiled. Grayson rubbed the bruise on his jaw. He's not running. He's resetting. Margaret entered with a folder. Subpoenas for your board. They'll cooperate if you stay public. That's the plan, he said. But his voice carried fatigue older than the sunrise. Elena approached quietly. You're doing the right thing, Mr. Holt. He looked at her. No longer an employee, not yet a friend, but something stronger. Witness. Doing the right thing doesn't fix what I broke. She shook her head. Maybe not. But it tells the world you're done breaking. Sophie ran in, clutching a drawing. 3 figures under a bright yellow sky, a daisy bigger than the sun. It's us, she said proudly. Mom says daisies grow again even when you cut them. Grayson smiled despite the wait. Then let's make sure this one grows everywhere. At 11:30, Bennett's team secured the perimeter for the broadcast. Satellite trucks parked across the street. Drones hovered like silver bees. Inside the study, lights flooded the oak desk where Grayson sat, papers fanned neatly before him. The statement waited on the monitor, cursor blinking. Margaret adjusted the tie he'd forgotten to straighten. Whatever happens, Lily would be proud. He blinked back the sting in his eyes. Then it's worth it. The clock hit noon. A red light above the camera blinked alive. He leaned forward. My name is Grayson Holt, he began, voice steady, slow. For years I built towers and called them progress. I told myself numbers were proof of purpose. I was wrong. What we buried in Savannah wasn't just negligence, it was people. Fathers, husbands, dreams that should have lived. He spoke of Robert Moore, of Elena's strength, of Sophie's courage, of how truth costs but silence ruins. Every sentence carved another layer off the man he'd been. And to the families who lost more than I can ever repay, my fortune, my company, my name are yours. Use them to rebuild what I helped destroy. When he finished, the silence felt infinite. Then the feed filled with hearts and comments, thousands streaming in from around the world. From Chicago, from Manila, from Madrid, we hear you. Bennett gave a short nod. It's done. Grayson exhaled, shoulders dropping. I know, he said softly. It's begun. 2 hours later, the first explosion hit the downtown data center housing Holt's financial servers. Glass shattered 3 blocks away. Bennett's radio screamed with crosstalk. Possible gas leak, no, intentional. Backup generators sabotaged. Grayson grabbed the nearest monitor feed. A plume of smoke rose where his company's heart used to be. The ticker at the bottom of the news channel read, Holt Developments collapses amid massive cyber attack. Sources linked to Ashford Trust. He slammed a fist on the desk. He's destroying the records. Bennett's voice cut through. Federal units are on it. You stay here, but he was already at the door. That building holds the employee pension files. They're innocent. Elena caught his arm. You can't go back into the fire. He looked at her, eyes fierce but gentle. I caused the fire. I'll end it. Outside, sirens tangled with wind. The city glared in midday brilliance as he drove toward the smoke. Traffic parted like waves around the Escalade. Phones raised as people realized who was behind the wheel. When he reached the site, firefighters fought a losing battle against black flames. Security drones whirred overhead, streaming live to every news outlet still connected to his servers. Grayson ran into the lobby before anyone could stop him, covering his mouth against the heat. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Screens melted like wax. In the center stood a single mainframe still humming, the backup that stored the payroll data of 5,000 workers. He yanked the emergency eject drive from the port and stuffed it inside his jacket. Alarms screamed as the floor cracked with heat. Outside, Bennett shouted his name. He emerged through the haze, coughing. Drive clutched like a relic. Paramedics rushed forward, but he waved them off. "Get this to the feds," he said, handing it to Bennett. "Every name, every pension. Make sure they're safe." A boom rocked the street behind him. Fire swallowed the last of Holt developments. The empire was gone. But the faces in the crowd, workers, reporters, strangers, started clapping, not in celebration but in recognition. Redemption looked like ruin wearing light. Elena found him leaning against a paramedic van, soot streaking his face. "You did it," she whispered. He shook his head. "We did. Robert did. Lily did. Even you with a letter." Sophie slipped her small hand into his. "Can we go home now?" Grayson looked toward the horizon, toward the mansion, toward a future built on truth instead of towers. "Yes, sweetheart," he said. "We can go home." Behind them, in the smoke, the shape of a man in linen disappeared into an alley, phone pressed to his ear. "Phase 1 failed," Ashford murmured. "Move to contingency." And somewhere deep in the city's power grid, a new line of code began to pulse under the name Project Renewal. The storm wasn't finished, but for the first time, Grayson Holt wasn't afraid to face it. 2 weeks later, Charleston exhaled. The smoke had cleared, the sirens had stopped, and what remained was quieter than grief. A city beginning to remember what honesty sounded like. Grayson Holt sat on a wooden bench near the waterfront, his arm in a sling, watching the horizon bleed gold across the bay. The world had taken everything with one hand, his fortune, his company, his reputation, and given him something better with the other, peace. The live confession had changed more than the headlines. Holt Developments was now under federal control, its profits redirected into a public trust for the victims' families. The same cameras that once recorded his downfall now captured schools and homes being rebuilt with the funds he surrendered. Elena approached slowly, carrying 2 coffees, the wind tugging at her hair. Sophie skipped ahead, clutching a small bouquet of daisies she'd picked from the roadside. "You didn't have to bring that," Grayson said, smiling faintly. Elena handed him a cup and sat beside him. "After everything you gave, I think I can afford 2 coffees." He chuckled softly. It felt strange, that sound. He hadn't heard it in years. "How's Sophie?" he asked. "She sleeps through the night now," Elena said. "She asked if you could come to her school play next week." "She's playing the sun." He looked toward the girl spinning on the boardwalk with her daisies. "She already is." A silence settled between them, gentle and full. Elena's eyes searched the waves. "You could start again, you know. People still believe in you." "Bennett said the Attorney General wants your help on the reform board." Grayson shook his head. "No more building towers. It's time to build people," she smiled. "So then maybe you finally found your purpose." He turned to her, sunlight glinting off the scar on his cheek. "You helped me find it." Elena lowered her gaze, the faintest blush warming her skin. "You found it yourself. I just reminded you where to look." Later that afternoon, Detective Bennett joined them, a folder under her arm. "Got news," she said. "Sterling Ashford's accounts have been frozen. But he's still missing." Grayson nodded, unsurprised. "He'll resurface. Men like him can't live without a mirror." Bennett smiled wryly. "We'll be ready when he does." She paused, glancing toward Sophie, who was now handing out daisies to strangers on the pier. "That kid's got magic in her," Bennett said. Grayson watched the girl skip toward a tired fisherman and tuck a daisy behind his ear, making the old man laugh out loud. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She reminds me that innocence doesn't need saving, just protecting." Bennett rested a hand on his shoulder. "You did good, Holt. You kept your promise." When she left, Elena and Sophie stayed a while longer, watching the gulls dive through the light. Eventually, Elena rose. We should go. I promised Sophie ice cream before sunset. Grayson nodded. Go on, I'll be right behind you. Sophie ran ahead, then turned back and called, Don't forget your flower. He looked down. A single daisy lay on the bench beside him, its petals trembling in the wind. He picked it up, rolling the stem gently between his fingers. As the sun sank, Grayson pulled his phone from his coat pocket. A new message blinked on the screen. From Sterling Ashford. Subject, the orchard still grows. He opened it, no words. Just a photo. A construction site in another city bearing a familiar sign, Ashford Urban Renewal, in partnership with Holt Legacy Trust. Grayson's reflection glimmered on the phone's glass. The message wasn't a threat. It was an invitation, or a warning. He couldn't tell which. He smiled faintly, slipping the phone into his pocket. Not today, he murmured. Not anymore. He stood watching Elena and Sophie disappear down the pier, laughter spilling behind them like music. The wind tugged at his jacket, carrying the scent of salt and new beginnings. For the first time in years, Grayson Holt wasn't chasing redemption. He was living it. He knelt beside the water and placed the daisy gently on the surface. The tide carried it away, a small perfect circle of white and yellow drifting into the light. Some stories aren't about heroes or villains, but about people learning when to stand, when to fall, and when to begin again. Grayson Holt lost everything he built, only to discover the one thing that truly lasts: integrity. I'm John Parker, and if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Tell us in the comments which city or country you're listening from. And remember, even when life burns everything to the ground, the daisy still grows again,